Hey guys, Shannon and I just got back from a really cool retreat in California. We haven't quite got it fully digested, but this episode, we just talk a little bit about some of the little spiritual encounters we've had the last week or two, some of the people that we've seen interacting in our lives that have played a little part in teaching us some of these spiritual principles we're learning about. Hope you enjoy the episode and that life treats you well. God bless. Thanks for
Richard,
being here.
thanks for having me. Thanks for being here.
We just got back from an epic week. How are you digesting?
I feel like I haven't even started digesting as much as I'm just radiating.
Tell everyone what happened.
We had an amazing opportunity. We just got back from Healdsburg, California at the Bishop Ranch with Father Sean Olari. And he gave lectures on Christ consciousness, which was absolutely amazing. For me, I just felt like it was just food for the soul. It was so savoring. I feel like I left there. It was like throwing gasoline on my fire. Like I just feel on fire.
It's awesome. That was such a good opportunity. And we're going to, when they post more clips of it, we'll post pieces of what he taught us and then we'll talk all about it. But until we have that footage,
Yeah.
we'll probably hold off on talking about a lot of it.
Yeah. I still need a lot of digesting.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I feel like it's just been an amazing week in that sense. One of the things I kind of wanted to play, kind of just wanted to riff a little bit today. Yesterday when we were talking of like what topic should we talk about today, I threw it up and was like, hey, which I do often, and was like, hey guys, help drop down what a topic we should talk about today. And then I was getting ready and you sent me a video on Hawkins and I think you're going to play it. And then I was like, message received.
Yeah, let me play this real quick.
So all of us within spiritual work, have held a spiritual ideal, a teacher, a spiritual figure, somebody who's inspiring, who speaks to us, who we can relate to. Even if it's just the soldier walking into battle, I look at the guy and I could tell, despite terror, by God, he's going to do it. I already got it from the heart. I already got it. And intuitively, he gets that I got it. So all of us who get what the reality of other people is, feed back to that person that reality, and it's through you that the evolution of consciousness occurs. When you get the divinity of the essence of that which everyone is, and you affirm it like you do in the heart for the warrior, you know what the warrior is doing as he walks over the hill into a sure hail of bullets. You know what the hell, you know damn well what he's doing. So when you own that in the heart, or the woman screaming her head off before they had anesthesia for childbirth, half bleeding to death and her blood pressure going crazy, when we identify with that, we strengthen man's way out. So what can we do for mankind? Is own our own reality and acknowledge it and reverberate it to it in others. Those who are valorous, own their valor within yourself, give it strength and recognition. And in that way, all of humanity becomes valorous, and that's how we all evolve together.
How cool is that?
So cool. Love his message. So this is what I wanted to tell you that was so cool today. So we're like, what topic are we going to talk about? You send me that clip of Hawkins talking. I go over, my check oil engine came on. And so I was like, I better get this done because my gut was like, this could be something worse if you don't do it. So I go over there. I go in, I get checked in. The guy's like, okay, go take a seat. I go take a seat. I put this clip on again. I'm reflecting back and I'm digesting because when Hawkins is talking about it, what it was making me think about and ponder is like, how cool is it that there's so many of us souls around and that it doesn't always necessarily need to be an amazing spiritual teacher, but like sometimes souls will just show up and present a message, right? And so then I start thinking, I'm like, huh, I wonder if when people are giving messages, like if they're an awareness or not of it. So I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, okay. And then I get up, I'm like, I'm going to go make myself coffee. So I go to the little coffee stand, and this older gentleman that works there who's like in his mid 60s comes walking over, and just the way that he did was like he wasn't coming over there for any reason. It's like he came over and he stood there, and then he looked over at me and he said, "Hey, I don't know if you've had our coffee, but it's pretty good here." And I said, it's really funny. When I used to be married, I would always volunteer to go get the oil change because the coffee here is good and I would get like an hour of peace and quiet. So I was always up for that. And he looked at me, he said, "Huh, you're no longer married?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "I'm sorry to hear that." He's like, I happen to be married twice and divorced twice. And I don't think I'm ever going to get married again. And I said, "Really?" I was like, "Tell me more about that." And he said, "Well, after my last divorce, I've just had this time where I've really gotten to know myself. Like I'm a people pleaser. And what I realized is in all my relationships, I kept giving myself away. I didn't even know who I was." And he's starting to talk to me, and I could realize I'm like, he's giving me a message right now. We're having a spiritual moment, and I don't know that he's necessarily aware of it, right? So then he looks at me and he goes, "The one thing I could give you advice on is if I could tell you anything, I would tell you the best gift you can give is giving yourself the opportunity, like starting to know yourself, coming inward." And so again, I'm talking to this guy who works there, 65 years old, changing tires and oil, right? And then he looks at me, he goes, "Are you familiar with Edgar Casey?" Or no, I'm sorry, not Edgar Casey. Oh God, Eckhart Tolle.
Yep.
And I look at him, I go, "Yes, I am." He's like, "I've been on this new path about finding myself. And I realize the more I find myself, it illuminates opportunities for other people." And we just keep kind of going back and forth, but I'm sitting there witnessing, even as I'm in conversation, the whole thing. I'm like, you can't make this shit up. I literally was asking the universe, like in conversation with them about souls and coming and giving messages and at the right time and all these things, right? And here I am at an oil place. Like this guy, I wouldn't even, if you looked at him, he just looked like some guy. The last thing he's thinking about is consciousness, is what you would think, right? So he like me, he comes over, he looks at me, he goes, "Wow, this is really fascinating. I usually don't get to talk to people about this." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, it's funny. You know what I do for a living? Part of the reason why I'm not married right now is I started following my calling and my path. And my whole journey right now is to help liberate other souls. That's the whole point of my process, like, or being here at this point." And he was like, "Well, that was just great." And he like walks away. And then I'm sitting there, and then the next guy comes and wanders over. Now, this guy's the younger guy who comes over, and it was so funny because he just comes over, and again, I can tell he's not aware, but he keeps like looking at me and he's like, "Isn't it just a really great, like, isn't it nice just to be with yourself?" And I'm like, "Mm-hmm, it is great." But he's like, I guess what I was just trying to say is like they're articulating these things that I know these guys never talk about in the sense of like with their typical customers coming in or whatever. But what I was also recognizing in there was that the light, meaning my soul was in a space where I was in this deepness of like reflecting, and as I've done a lot of this work, I've gotten rid of a lot of baggage, and my belief systems are everything that is needed will be brought in at the time. I don't have to go out and find it necessarily. So even in that little moment that we had, it was the universe in a sense coming back to me to go reflect of like, yeah, this is actually exactly how this works, right? And the manifesting of that. Like what I find so fascinating too is the ability of light and how it will draw others in is so quickly. It's so divinely orchestrated at this amazing level that it's like when I'm walking around, it's those experiences where I'm like, it's so exciting. It's just curious. Like, what is going to be brought? How cool is that? Who did I really think I was going to go get my oil change? I didn't even know I was getting my oil change till I got in the car this morning. I was like, oh God, I got to go
Mm.
do that. And then went and had just like a very, I would say it was a thinning of the veil, like a thin moment for all of us. And it was a deeper connection. And no, I didn't think Joe over at the auto body shop, whatever, was going to have that but how freaking cool. And it's part of like what we've been talking about and doing.
Yeah, that's one of the things about the mind and consciousness. There's all that stuff's happening all the time. The part of the reason there are no accidents is because you're energetically, everything's happening energetically, and just your eyes don't see it. Your mind certainly isn't generally aware of it. Mm. And then the other thing is that all things, I keep hearing people say it now too, and I don't know if they're saying it because they hear it or they're starting to believe it, but you start to notice people are starting to. Someone said that today even, that someone's talking about something really awful that happened or something bizarre, and the other person always say, well, all things happen for a reason.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they totally do.
Yeah.
So that's, it's becoming like common, probably because even if it's not like a super conscious, like on the deepest level in the brain, people can feel that, and people are starting to understand that. People are starting to feel it. I feel like empowerment from knowing that.
It, it's funny when you're talking about that. It made me think of so many times during my spiritual path and like coming into awareness where I would come over a saying and be like, oh, that's what it means. Like, that's why I've been saying it the whole time,
Yeah.
but like not actually having it fully digest and click until having those aha moments. And it's like, yeah, you're right. There are no accidents because there are no accidents. Everything, at least what I have seen, is completely divinely orchestrated. And a lot of it is we're manifesting it too, whether you're aware of it or not. And that's what one thing I've been trying to teach my clients big time is be careful on your manifestations. Like when you're starting to do that or you're thinking about things, because what we tend to do in our humanness is kind of go to the negative thing of like what we're not going to get instead
Mhm.
of what we're seeking. So then we start creating this whole formation of what we don't want, and the universe is like, okay, we'll get that right over to you, right? And then people are confused, like, why does this keep happening to me? Well, because you keep asking for it in a sense. So be very, very cautious on that. What I encourage people to do on manifesting is visualize how you want to feel. How do you want to feel in that situation? What are you seeking? Like, so for example, one that is a common one that comes in is like women who are seeking, who are maybe older, who are seeking to get in a relationship and want to have a family, and that biological clock is ticking, right? It's hard for them to think positive or to look at themselves as like actually being able to be in a relationship and like what would it be like to have a kid, because what they're doing is they're manifesting out of fear of what they don't have. And
Mm.
we do that all the time. So it's this panic of like, oh shit, I'm never going to find a man. I'm never going to find a man. I'm never going to have a baby. I'm never going to have a baby. And then they're like, I'm 36 and I haven't found a man or a baby. I can't figure out why, you know?
Yeah, the universe is like, I believe you. I believe you.
I
I believe you.
totally. They're like, and we're here to serve you, and we're here to serve you. So I just encourage to pay attention. The way you would want to reshift that is like, and what I also tell people too is try to really, when you're manifesting, not go so much on the details, but like, again, how do you want to feel? So if you're seeking to come into partnership again, how would you like your partner to make you feel? Not what you want your partner to be, what you want them to do, all those things, but like, when I'm with this person, I want to feel really safe. I want to feel that like I can let down to get like intimate and vulnerable in those deeper spaces. Like, and I want to be able to have a family with this person where like our love is like this child is an expression of that love, instead of like, okay, I have to hit this check mark
Mhm.
and I need to get it this time and this and that. That's a lot of those thoughts get into the way of the manifesting, and then the universe doesn't listen to words, they listen to vibrations, and then they're like, okay, here you go. So it's hard sometimes if we haven't received something that we're seeking, but trying to envision like, this could feel good is the key I try to teach.
Well, some of that, like you were saying, I need this, or that, if neurolinguistic programming, if you're stating I need, you're right there. You've already missed it because you're
Yeah,
saying I
I don't.
lack.
Right. I don't
And
have it.
so then like, okay. And the, all people being fractals of divinity in that sense, if you're thinking about God doing this to you or a God over there doing these things to you, I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably aren't thinking that anymore, but that's what people get caught up in, that God, when God's will and then these things are happening and look why all these bad things happen to me. Well, as soon as you realize that you are a fractal of God and you are creating every possible second, it's impossible to not be creating. That's all you're ever doing is creating, and whether or not that's conscious or unconscious. And the when people are still thinking of God as, instead of being a fractal of God, as like a God over there that's doing these things, this principle can be taken to say, like someone could be in an abusive relationship and be like, all things happen for a reason. There are no mistakes. God must want me here. And that's an abdication of responsibility on God, instead of what it's actually purposely trying to do with its suffering is help you understand, hey, you're creating this thing. Do you like this?
Yeah,
You creating that? Hey, is this
totally.
fun?
But then
You know?
people, and then though, because people, that's hard sometimes because then people also have to take accountability, right?
Yeah.
And then it's easy to pass the buck. It's easy to be like, hey, here you go. It's when you were just talking, not to sidetrack, but it reminded me at the very beginning of my practice, like my spiritual awakening. There's a couple times I would be out at the tree in the woods and would have these like really deep visions that kind of came in, like lucid dreams. Like I wasn't asleep, but I would just be there and get these visions. And one of them I had was, I was like it gave me this vision where I was in this boat and I was getting ready to set sail, and I'm like heading across, like, cause it probably was like at that time I'm embarking on all this newness and it was kind of scary. And so I have this image where I'm like on this boat and I'm trying to like get to this other side. And all of a sudden this storm like comes in. And I remember in this vision, like it scared me. I grew up on the water, and like anybody who's been around the ocean knows, like you respect it. Like it can change very quickly. And I remember being on this boat and being like, how the hell, I can't do this on my own. I cannot do this on my own. And it was this moment where I'll never forget. Like I remember looking up and I was like, God, I need your back. Like I need your help, because I didn't like asking for help. But what I also realized in that moment was that it was a relationship, that I also needed to ask for help, but also didn't have expectations to be saved every time. Like that there were certain things that it was a hand in hand practice, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
and after I had that vision, the way that I have moved forward from that is never looking at it or blaming. I would say, like, I very well aware that I have a hand in the creation. I'm also very well aware that I can also ask for assistance certain times too.
Yeah.
And that was hard for me to do.
Yeah. One thing I learned is to swap need with preference, because you could be in like a really hairy situation and be like, God, I'd really prefer that I don't die on this boat that I'm stranded on.
Yeah.
But if that's what you want, and letting it go in that way, not a need from, fear of death and all that. Because if anything, and obviously this is really hard to do, but you would be propagating the very thing that you're trying to, um, you might get served with the suffering.
Right.
So, and even the baby thing, you could be 36 years old and you're saying all these things, and then you're, as opposed to having a preference, hey, I prefer to have children, if that's, God
Mm.
willing, and let go of the attachment and the suffering. And this has been the same lesson since the dawn of humanity, and like every spiritual teacher has essentially taught the same thing over and over. And it always comes down to unattachment. It comes down to surrendering your own personal will being the will of the small self, the egoic self, not your higher self will, because that will is one and the same with God. And that's why intuitively you're going to be oriented in the truth and things that actually create less suffering when you follow your intuition, as opposed to the mind that's saying, "Oh, I'm 36 and I have these things," or whatever else. If so, that's basically what your practice is about: is you're helping people transition from mind to soul. And one thing I noticed, I have a buddy at work. I call him Drax from the Avengers because he's a very, very literal person, and I love him like a brother. And he's like, he started watching the telepathy tapes, and he's like, "Holy crap!" So he was wondering if you knew how to, like, if someone's got a number, that like the mom's reading got a number, she writes down like 13 on a piece of paper or something, and the kid knows exactly what she wrote down. I was asking you the other day, can you do that? And you were explaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes and no. So I would say the reason why those kids their situation is a little different in the sense of like they've learned at a young age. So why the telepathy tapes I feel are a really big deal right now is because people are starting to see that there's another way that is out of the box big time, right? Like how are these kids able to write these numbers down or see these things? I would say I wish my abilities were that spot on where I could see it super clearly, and that's what I'm saying. I think because they're in relationship, like it's usually like a mother and a child, and so there's a real tight bond, and they're spending all their time together. So they've literally learned the language of each other. For me, I'm working with new individuals, some of the same, some repeat, a lot repeat, but like a lot of new people are coming in too. So I don't have that same like where I've actually learned their language as much of being in that space with them. But what I pick up really quickly are the essence, I would say, is a big thing. But then there's also times like yesterday when I was doing mediumship, I love it when I'm nailing it because I don't have any expectation. Like my whole hope is to connect, but I'm usually trying to get the overall message, but to get the actual specifics is like I always get super excited because the other thing is, at least the way that I experience, a lot of it is symbolic, and so sometimes it could change. So like one thing that I would articulate is like when clients come in and I'm talking to the loved one, and I always tell them too, I'm like, I'm going to teach you what's going on here as well. Like as we're connecting with your loved one. And one thing I'll start off, especially if they've never done mediumship before, I'm like, your loved one's going to be coming in, but they're no longer in the physical body. And they no longer have the egoic operating system, their thoughts. And so how they're expressing to me is different than like a conversation like you and I are having. So it's a very much an essence and symbol. So they might use a cake, for example. Like they might flash a cake to me, and that might represent, it could mean their birthday. It could mean their favorite thing was cake. It could be like it was a specific cake. Do you get what I'm saying? And so we have to kind of like figure it out. So I usually don't get the exact, like there's a little bit where I have to work with the sitter to figure out the pieces. But like yesterday, so for example, the other thing is like when I'm seeing things, it's not as clear as I'm able to see you right now. So I had a gal and her sister, or no, I'm sorry, her mom, or no, it was her sister, was coming across from the other side. At first, I was like, I think I'm seeing a iron because I saw a shape like this and it was sitting upright, but it was like almost just like a shape. And she's like, no, that doesn't make any sense. And then I go in and I ask more. I'm like, okay, give me a little bit more. What is that? And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, it's a pie. I was like, does a pie make sense? It's like a piece of a pie. All of a sudden she just starts crying. She's like, oh my gosh, my sister loves sweets. So when she was sick, I would bring her food all the time. And our favorite thing to do was actually have dessert before dinner, kind of a thing. And so her sister was, and in that she was also telling her sister that was here, thank you for taking care of her. And it was that part of that example. Sometimes it'll come in like super clear and I can hear it, see it, but not usually.
Yeah, so I bring it up because someone like that, and I believe because if you're nonverbal or whatever, you'd even develop the gift potentially higher. So there's obviously gradients of this access to the intuition from your gifts to, and then talking about like my friend who seems to maybe have very little of it. And I was trying to tell him, I'm like, what about when you go into a meeting and you feel intuitively like, this guy's kind of shady? So like, what are the things that you'd say that, like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 things, if someone's working to get beyond mind and starting to just intuit or get access to the intuition, what are like some pragmatic things that someone can start doing to start marching down the road of having access to the intuition?
So the first thing that I start teaching people is let's talk about like our operating systems. The first thing is we got to map out what the hell's going on in our beingness before we can figure out where to like go in to indicate, right? So if we have the mind, which I refer to a lot as the egoic operating system, which is the thinking patterns. This part of you is where you collect all of your programming. Usually when you come into this earth, the first 6-7 years of your life, it's where belief systems will set in. What I try to tell people is it's not necessarily your truth, but it's your data points you've been collecting from experiences, and then it sets in. And then this guy usually tries to control the whole show. The body, for the most part, is neutral. I'm not saying like the organs and stuff aren't doing, but when you're trying to figure out your intuition, utilizing your body to indicate where certain things are coming through. So the soul communicates through the intuition. And that part, usually everybody, I haven't seen it held anywhere else, but it's usually right here in the gut area. Sometimes it'll go up a little bit more in the chest, but it's usually right in that area. Where people have a hard time is because they're up in their thoughts all the time. And really, people are just in them all the time. So there's not this backing out to like pay attention to what they're actually saying. So we're just kind of in this autopilot. And the number one thing I start telling people to do is let's start witnessing ourselves. Let's just back up. I don't want you to necessarily go and do anything, but just go watch yourself literally the next day or two, as much as you can, like trying to stay into awareness. Watch it. Watch what your thoughts are saying. Start asking, like when I started going on this spiritual path, a lot of it was me starting to dissect everything. Why do I have this thought of negativity coming up? Do I actually believe this? Is this my own belief? Is this society's belief? Like, where is this even coming from? And starting to really go through to like remap things. What I would say is the intuition, when you're starting to feel and intuit things, it's starting to just understand, so for me, even now, I need to understand was this coming from my ego? Was this a thought that just dropped in, or is this a feeling? Typically, like what I've been working with you on too is like feeling, like getting you to start realizing like, where's that feel, right? And for you, because you're super easygoing, so I feel like in your energy field, you don't get a lot of disturbance anyways, but you're starting to recognize things like, oh, my body's a little tight. Why am I tight? I'm uncomfortable. Why am I uncomfortable? Because I might be late. I don't like being late, right? So that'll tense you up. So then you start just even learning what part is communicating. And then another thing that I ask almost every time at some point when I have clients in, I'll ask them when I'm teaching them this. Let me ask you, when has your gut, when you've ever had that gut, so a lot of times the gut is a feeling, a knowingness. It'll just direct, and it doesn't match up with what the thoughts are necessarily saying. And so when I ask people, I'm like, when have you ever had an experience where you listened to your gut and you followed it? Has it ever led you astray? And I am not kidding. I have not had one person who's been able to give me a story. Not one. And then I'm like, well, then how about your thoughts? Has that ever they're like, oh God, no. And I'm like, yeah. So right there, what I encourage people is to start listening. You have to back up. You're in it. So you got to back up and start feeling and start doing like experiments. How am I feeling? Is this a thought coming in? Does this actually match up with what I feel? One of the things I tell you, like anxiety, what I tend to find with a lot of people who are carrying it, it's because they have a civil war going on internally. They have these two energy fields that are trying to communicate to them internally, but they're not aligning. So it's almost like two opposing magnets that are doing this. And then it's creating all this static because there's a disconnect in the feed. And then people are like, and then they get overwhelmed with that and then get even more stuck up into their thoughts instead of being able to process of like, how am I feeling? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm.
So the thing we learned last week, and I'm starting to see it as like the main thing, mysticism is the ability to see the God in all things, people, plants, all that. And so the more you can settle into the intuition, you're accessing your godliness. Going back to Hawkins' first clip, if you start to realize that we are all fractals of God potentiating out of this animal brain into Christ consciousness, into this high level of being, and we can use our intuition, and we can also start reflecting that and seeing that in other people. I thought that was like one of the cool things about this week. So this whole process of getting into your body, the thing that has helped me, or getting into your intuition, the body has been really good at, for me, to help know, oh, this doesn't feel right. And sometimes, like I've said before, I'll be like writing. It could be just at work writing an email, and all of a sudden my shoulders are like just crunched up, and I'm like, why am I even all tense in my shoulders when I'm writing this email? So part of that is what was it, the Lao Tzu, when he wrote, what's the book? The
Tao.
What is it called again?
The Tao.
Basically, the teaching was, this is the way.
Yes.
And it was all about getting in the flow of life and not trying to force life, and the flow of, and this all sounds like weird to maybe not, obviously probably not to our listeners, but it does certainly get blasted around and maybe sounds a little bit off-putting and new agey, the whole when you start saying universe and energy and stuff, but quite literally, energy is all there is. There is nothing but energy.
This can has energy. This pen has energy. Everything. So this what I would say is my gift that I've been blessed with, and since a very young age, and I didn't actually realize it. I didn't come into realization of this until about 10 years ago. But I have always been able to see the God light in everyone and everything. And so even when I was a little girl, I don't know why I was reflecting on this the other day. When I would get up, when I was living in New Jersey and little, I remember I would get up in the summer times and I would start my day. I had a routine. I would go out the front door. I would go and talk to every one of the roses. I would say good morning, like not verbally, but like intuitively. I go up into this little path. I would lift up rocks. I would communicate to the centipedes, any little bugs I would see. I had a tree I talked to all the time. Ever since I was a little girl, like I've talked to all trees, but I've always had one tree that's like been my thing. And I would go out and I'd talk to animals and like nature and everything. And again, not knowing it. And I remember as a little girl, seeing people. Like, I grew up in New Jersey, and the New York news was on all the time. And in the 80s, it was scary in New York. Like, it was not a fun place to go. So there was, like, a lot of crime, and just hearing that. And so I remember so many times, like, seeing people and being like, they look scary, but they're really nice inside. Or seeing somebody who didn't look so great, or, like, looked really great and put together and being like, they're not so nice inside. Like, just having that intuitive knowingness. As I've expanded on it more, I'm like, God, it is a beautiful gift. Like I've said this before and I say it often. There is not one soul that I've come across, whether it's, look, I'm going to get all choked up. I had that experience anyways, where a blade of grass, anything, a bird, like anything I can look at. And it's just this amazing, I'm just like, look how beautiful they are. The part though, I'm also going to say is sometimes I just don't like people's humanness. Like sometimes I'm just like, but I also can recognize that's not them. Right. So part of too, in my sessions, sometimes it gets tricky because I'm talking to the spirit in them. Like I'm bypassing the ego, like I'm very well aware what's going on, but I'm like, and I'm just seeing and reflecting. And one of my favorite joys, I could literally die right now and just be at peace. Like, I don't want to, but meaning when I sit there and I get to witness these souls and their egos will kind of give pushback. They're uncomfortable, but it's like, I'm just keep illuminating them to be able to watch them melt into themselves and feel the essence of their pureness for the first time. And since a lot of times people haven't felt it since they were a kid, is one of the most life-giving and most beautiful things to witness. And it is the essence of life itself. It is so powerful. And that is the whole point I'm doing all of this now, is because I look at those souls and I'm like, I want to help liberate. I want you to be able to see you. Like, you are so divinely beautiful, and to come into your own essence of you, because that's the other part. Like I loved it. Father Sean O'Leary was saying, like, the whole point, we're all here. Each of us have a mission, but the overall is to birth God, right? To be able to be like, you are the divine expression of that. And for when you illuminate like that, it allows everybody else to, and to come into their wholeness. And it feels so good. It's so comfortable to be in your own beingness, right? And what I witness over and over is that this guy, the mind, has come in, and it wants to hijack. Like, and it's not that it's bad, it's all part of us. But I always use that example of it, like, it reminds me of a 17-year-old boy who's just got car keys to like a Porsche. Like, I'm not doing anything bad, but like, he wants to drive. I don't know if I want a 17-year-old driving me around all the time. You know what I mean? It's not like it's bad, but getting that where you position it, where all your mind, body, and soul are in alignment, puts you into this flow state. And there is nothing more beautiful than that.
Yeah, I often think about the fact that even for gurus, so one of the things, and we'll go deeper in his things, one of the things you have to kill to access this is even the guru, because you start looking at somebody and you start admiring them and looking for answers for them. And then at the end of the day, it's not even that person, the individual person in that protoplasm suit. It's the divinity in that protoplasm suit that's managing to seep out at a higher rate potentially than other people, which is why you look at them as like, oh my gosh, like, these guys are amazing.
Go
ahead.
I was just going to say, but they also carry the essence, right? They've done this thing where they don't have these limiting beliefs. And what I come to find is, like, it is just the essence of the soul coming out, right? And so we're all light. And so when we get the experience to be around somebody of a higher conscious state, we naturally, when we blend our energy fields, it gives us this opportunity, whether we are conscious of it or not, to have this experience that brings us into a more wholer state, which is so powerful. And this is why I feel like Jesus at certain vibrations didn't have to, like, he was able to heal just in his energy field.
And there's probably some parts, I would say maybe the only part that really is, the parts of you that are not Jesus, basically the ego. I don't know that there's nothing about that thing that's really appealing or people enjoy. So if you want to feel, as you work to feel good, you're going to have a higher embodiment of that divinity. And then what you're reflecting outward isn't personal to you. You can't even take credit for it. Even if you're a great person, someone's like, oh, hey, you're really awesome. It's really not the thing that you think is you, the egoic self, that's awesome. It's the thing, it's the stuff that's managed to come out despite being covered by the small, sense of you, the egoic self. So I think that's an important thing to remember, that if everybody also knows, and that's why a lot of what it said, I think Ramana Maharshi says his whole teaching was like, who am I? And there's a process of just remembering who you are. Is everybody's in the same exact thing? You're in a process of remembering what you are, and the more access you have to that, the more you're connected with intuition, the more you're connected with life, the more joy you have, the more peace. We've shown the scale of consciousness. So I think that's an important thing to know. If you could help an individual that's really struggling in life get a little bit of a window, like you just said, into their light, then you've given them, that's liberation, is because you've just said, hey, what you need, you don't need anything. There's nothing outside of you that's going to come in and make you happy. Yeah. But if you can help if you can reflect back at somebody that's even someone in prison, or that's done all these awful things, or just, and so like the conversation you had with the oil person, you reflect it back at them. You've just you've just acknowledged divinity in them. And then if they can see it, then they're going to feel, oh my gosh, this is a relief. And that's who I am. They start remembering who
Yes.
they are.
Which is such a beautiful, it's when I first started working and working with souls, you know, again, I've embarked on this experience. This isn't something like when I was little, I'm going to grow up to do. It's like it ended up being a calling and part of my purpose of being here. And so even in that, right, like to be able to show up and be like, oh, this is like every time I get to show up, I'm just being the most authentic version of myself. And in that, I get to reflect that back to others and get to see it and witness it. And I just had, like, even yesterday, I had a gal that I've been working with for a year that had a lot of trauma happen last year, like literally to the date of our session yesterday. And it's a miracle that she's still here on the earth plane, because some other soul who was in a very dark place basically tried to take her life and did just some random act of a lot of violence. She wasn't even able to leave her house last year for a couple months. And we have been doing this dance, I would say, back and forth for the last year. And it has been such an honor to witness her and her growth and the courage she has had to come out of it. But what I've had to stand in this position, right? Because to have a violent act to you, a violent random act is really jarring and scary. And a lot up in the ego had taken over. And it's like, what's wrong with me? Why did this happen? Why, right? And she has done this work. So we have continually worked over and over. And what I'm trying to do is say, you are not that's not you. Even that experience you had, it was something you had, but the essence of you, that's not you, and trying to reflect that over and over. And yesterday I got on the Zoom call with her and I was like, holy cow. I was like, you look so good. The other thing that I also intentionally and not intentionally, but part of this work, we were kind of talking about that this weekend, was in these process of trying to lead people back into this homecoming, as somebody, as a spiritual advisor, I don't know what you would call me or whatever, over here trying to reflect that light back. As she's growing, there's a lot of clinging she wanted to do to me, right? Because I was the one to help get her out. And that's the part when you're going back to killing your guru or whatever. What I was also trying to do, I was very well aware that she was at a state of brokenness when I first started working with her, and that I needed to help build her up. And I do tell my client, I'm going to be your training wheels, but I'm not going to stay on forever. And at certain phases in this growth, I'll be there, and then I'm going to pull out at certain times. And so for her, she started strengthening over the last couple months, and I knew it. Well, I told her, I was like, I'll get back to you and we'll set something up, but I didn't. And I intentionally was like, yes and no. There was a knowingness. She needed these last like two and a half months on her own to realize that she does have the power to strengthen, right? Mm-hmm. And when I saw her yesterday and we had our session, it was so beautiful to watch, because again, she has taken in this practice over and over. I'm not my thoughts. There's a bigger part of me. I have a purpose. And a girl who last year didn't think she had the worthiness to live told me yesterday, not fully there yet to say that this experience, I don't want to say it was a gift, but like there's this huge transformation thing coming, because guess what she's about to go embark on? Mm. Going to help victims, to advocate for them, of people who were in her situation, right? And in that, like, there's so much trauma and so many things. Like, if I was in my thoughts just hearing her story, I'd be like, oh my God, this is just horrible. And it was. But also being able to see the light in there and the depths and what is about to transmute out of this pain and this hardship, there's nothing more beautiful than that. And her light is in this expansion process that is going to help lift all these other spirits up who are in the dark. And that, again, is what this beautiful process not only is a homecoming to ourselves, but as we start to get in these highest conscious fields, we start to see our other brothers and sisters, and we're like, let me shine light. Like, I'm not going to leave you behind. I'm not going to do it for you necessarily, but I'm going to be here to support you within the light to come into wholeness. And again, what I feel is the whole purpose of why we're here.
Yeah, and there's a quote that Course in Miracles has about that says that I love about that story. But when you do this with everybody, but when you meet anyone, remember it is a holy encounter. As you see him, you will see yourself. As you treat him, you will treat yourself. That goes with the principle too. In the book, they talk about you can't actually see something in someone else unless it resides in yourself. So if you were to think of like selfishly wanting to alleviate your own personal suffering in life, one of the ways you can do that is just spend all your time, and this is why Gandhi said to find yourself, capital S, lose yourself, lowercase s, in the service of others, because when you do that and you help someone in a small way, that little thing, that might be something you didn't even realize about yourself. Maybe you help this person realize, hey, I really admire that you're resilient. Well, you wouldn't recognize resilience if you didn't have resilience. I really like that you're this. And so like the practice of just loving on other people, that's why it means literally loving on yourself in the sense that we are all fractals of the same source, yes. But even just like it serves you to just acknowledge the hell out of every person, like every possible positive thing you can do. And so I'm working to do that more. I definitely don't love some of the humanness that people have, but that sometimes is showing me something that maybe is unhealed or needs to be forgiven. Because if someone's doing something nonsensical, someone's like, I don't know, someone's over there in the street painting themselves orange, probably not going to trigger like a negative emotional response. It's humanness, but it's not like agitating me. But if somebody's, I don't know, being rude to somebody and I don't know, something that really agitates me, maybe there's a lesson there for me. Maybe there's something I need to let go of. Maybe there's a little bit of me. And then, by the way, I'm not saying you condone that someone's being angry. I'm talking about this crazy emotional response in the body. If the intuition, if you feel this over triggering or this over thing, potentially you can find things that actually need to be healed in you alongside your positive attributes, which are the things that you actually can find. And maybe as a practice, you could find someone that's seemingly unlovable. And if you could manage to find like, I don't know, one like super awesome thing, that'd be just kind of like a cool game to play.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a beautiful, like, I like what you said too, is I think a lot of us are reacting, right? So we take things personally. So it's like, like I know this sounds so crazy, but I remember like at the beginning of my awakening, I think I've already talked about my driving issues on here. I like to go fast. I like to move. And so I used to get angry all the time driving. And I remember coming up to a 4-way stop at one time, and this guy like just cut like everybody. It's a long wait. School's happening. We're late, whatever. And this guy just comes blowing through like out of turn. My abilities had started to come in at the time. And so I remember watching him, and I went to go react, like, what the hell, you know? And all of a sudden my spirit, like my soul was like, I could just like feel his essence in that moment. And as like he was going by, I remember looking at him, and that's where it like penetrated through. I'm like, oh, he's like, there's something going on. Like, he's not being a jerk right now. But how many times do we take things so personal and create some narrative in our head that somebody's out to get us or whatever? Which again, coming into these states of awareness, it gives you more of a wider view to go, okay, I doubt that person just blew that stop sign. They don't even know me. Like, they have no vendetta against me, right? And starting to witness to your point of, how can I go in here to be more assistance to those who are in more of a struggle or not able to see it? and to come into a place of non-judgment, but witnessing and discernment to say like, hey, maybe, right? Like, so in certain situations, I feel like I just saw one with you at the airport where you could have totally gone off on somebody.
Oh yeah.
And you didn't.
No.
And I could feel your entire body swallow it.
Yeah.
And then I could feel you starting to go into your mind of all the things you could say. Would this be fair to say?
Yeah.
And you didn't.
No.
And there was some circumstance, but it was like, even that's a good learning lesson.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the old you would have popped off and said, and we wouldn't have gotten on the plane.
Yeah.
Either.
Yeah.
But that's growth, meaning there's
Yeah.
this awareness of like, even in those stopping points. So when I'm teaching people too, like even in their own thoughts, once you even just have those like pause where you're just like, oh, I would normally respond in this way and I'm not. And maybe you haven't transmuted it even into the positive, but just stopping it is a huge growth because you're starting to catch on to the, okay. And ultimately, folks, all of us, we're all connected. So if you hurt them, you're really just hurting yourself.
I saw this video, and I don't know if this is a spiritually evolved person, but this guy goes to fight him in the street, and the kid takes all his clothes off, and then the guy starts chasing after him. Totally neutralized the situation. Like, the guy's so angry. Hilarious video. I don't know. Maybe I'll post it. But when I would go to your office and I'd write down like all these things and things I can do, and some of the people listening that are waiting to get in and see you or they're whatever, two action items that I feel like people could do as a practice, and maybe if you do it, you can comment on our podcast and tell us how it's working for you. One is accept the challenge of finding something divine in every person.
Yeah.
Every single person. Maybe there's someone at work that's like the biggest turd ever, or my brother's ex, or somebody that you're like, you have a harder time than normal, but part of the forgiveness also and loving process is, what is it that's actually really awesome about this person, and acknowledge that seed of divinity. And the humanness can do what it's doing, but that's going to bloom ideally. So that's one. The other one is what you just said about which I am in the process of doing, is transmuting something negative into positive, and it's called Tonglen. It's also a Taoist, pretty sure it's a Buddhist Taoist principle where you inhale nonsense, like the whatever terrible things going on.
Breathe in
you pass
pain.
it to the generator, the love chamber, and exhale love. And in that way, we're all like those sucker fish in the aquariums that are like going around cleaning off algae all day. Like, those are like the coolest fish ever. You put them in your tank, and they're just literally. And sea pickles do this. There's a couple of those kind of things. And if the more people that do it, and you're taking in, instead of propagating the same energy, because you cannot destroy energy. You
can't create it. You can either project the same energy out or you transmute it. Those are your only two options.
So if we're on this earth and we have this energy to deal with, we got to do something with it. Let's transmute it. And so that would be my two challenges for our listeners. If you can find divinity in someone new this week, maybe every day, find at least one person, maybe a stranger too. That'd be really cool. You're at the grocery store, and the sweet guy that's like bagging your groceries, that's smiling at you or does something awesome. Just paying a compliment or acknowledging something in someone, and seeing that you're reflecting yourself in that person. And then Tonglen, if you could. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instead of just flipping out, just
breathe, exhale,
breathe
love
it out. And then after a second too, you might see that it was just some old person driving down the road, and you might see that it's whatever, someone, even if it's just some teenager, who knows what it is, but it's someone that's just doing their best, that's ignorant, which is the only sin there is ignorance. And we all are ignorant. I'm ignorant. We're all very ignorant to varying degrees. And God help us climb out of our ignorance so that we might suffer less.
Right, which is beautifully stated. The other thing I want to talk about too is in that process, it's real popular too. So sometimes what we do as humans is we avoid situations because we're uncomfortable in them, right? And we're like, oh, that has bad vibrations, I'm not going over there. The way I would tell you is you're never gonna get away from humanness ever. Like, we live on this planet, and there's varying degrees of conscious levels. Some are super dense and some are really high, right? So avoidance is not the practice. I actually look at it as an awesome playground to start going out and practicing, in the sense of like, isn't that person interesting? It's not like, but how can I, to your point, be able to see them and reflect, see the divinity? I mean, again, I have a cheat sheet because I can see it in everybody, but like, so I'm able to see that piece. But like, if I notice my humanness is kicking in and I'm irritated or like bothered, I drop right into the presentness to go, okay, I can actually just see their God light. They're just loving, like they're just some of their humanness is acting. But also in that is, it's this powerful, what I would tell you what's really powerful about this when you're telling people to go out and practice this, which I would also agree with. What you're actually doing in those moments, if you guys go out and practice this, you're coming into awareness in those moments. So you're actually bypassing your thinkingness and going down into your presence. You can only see presence coming from presence. Does that make sense? So like, meaning when I'm seeing people at a soul level, I'm seeing it in that, I'm present in that moment, and I'm seeing it in the soul, so it can only match. So meaning when you actually start to take the time to look at people in that way, you will be so surprised how quickly you are able to see the good in them. Like, it will wash over you in this very deep way that you'll be like, whoa, it's a rattling, not in a bad, it's like an expansion is what's actually happening, because it's hitting your heart. And love is one of the only energy fields that just keeps expanding and expanding and expanding. It doesn't retract. It's like it can just keep going. So when another practice that I'll just add this in if you want extra homework, but like, is called gazing. I call it either beholding or gazing, which what I'm saying is just even go outside or be out in public or something and get into a witnessing position. But like, a lot of behold for me is like, I'll go outside, I'll just start looking at a tree. And if I start really looking at a tree, I'm like, oh my God, look at all the bark on that tree. Like, look at the life in that tree. Oh my gosh, look, there's little ants crawling up over here. Like, they have a whole village in here. And it starts to open up this expansion place in your soul where you're starting to witness it at that very deep present level. And it's hard not to expand. And I have yet, again, I would tell you with the clients that I work with, when they start doing this practicing, I love when they come back in the office, because they're like little kids. They're like, because they're seeing it from that place. So they'll come in, they're like, oh my gosh, I haven't taken the time to like be curious or be like even at the blades of grass or even things like that, where they'll come in and you can just start see this opening that is just, it's just beautiful, because it is loving awareness.
Yeah, Sean was saying that something along the lines of that same essence or that same divinity is in the trees, it is in the rocks, it is in everything equally. We tend to think of like even humans as being superior to, animals or whatever, but it's all part of the exact same source. So part of contemplative meditation, which is kind of what that is, I feel like, where you just contemplate life, you contemplate interactions with people, the environment. That's the way. That seems like one of the ways to do it.
Absolutely. Oh God, I love contemplation. And that's kind of what I was saying a little bit earlier without giving the word to it, was when I said I started taking things and dissecting. Like, I started, and I would encourage everybody to do this too. I was walking around the world like all of us were, taking in this thing, just believing certain things I was being told, and then starting to get to a point of like, do I actually believe that? Is that my viewpoint? How do I feel about this? And in the contemplation practice, what I feel is very beautiful is you take those things, whatever it may be, it could be even like education. Do I believe in education or homeschooling? What are the values or the non-value? I mean, any topic you could bring up. And the way that I do it is like a distilling process almost. So I'll be like, okay, well, I can see the value over here. I can see the value over here. What makes sense to me here? What doesn't? And then bringing it into my own, like integrating it into my beingness of where it makes sense and resonates at that deeper level.
We'll talk more about Sean, but in that same, you said educate, he taught me that the word means to lead forth from within, or to lead forth. So you're not actually going to people and telling them what to do or giving them answers per se. If you can, part of this practice as you do it, all our listeners, is see what you can do to lead the person forward to see that in themselves, whatever it might be. And then one way to do that too is maybe I was doing it the other day. I was on a date with this gal, and she was feeling like she's working as like a server, and she wanted to do something cool, like she wanted to do something better. And I was asking her what her superpower is. She's like, I don't know. Anyway, we did this whole thing where I'm just asking her questions and helped her. And then we finally found this thing like she loves doing. She's super good at it. And I'm like, well, that looks like a superpower to me. And so that seems to be like one of the things I learned from Sean last weekend, this kind of spiritual, or this teacher jujitsu, is where you see these people that are in need, but instead of, all need is victimhood and lack, which has no reality to it. We can do everything. And so if the practice I'm going to work on too is helping people discover their own power, their own sovereignty, that they do in fact know the answer, and just leading them to, and helping them kill. There's so much reliance we have on so many things. And this is what we'll get into deep on the subsequent podcast, is the things that we need to kill in order to allow this inner relationship we have, which is educate, to bring forth what we have inside us.
Absolutely. One thing I would say from witnessing souls, my experience of them coming in, it is very common in a session for me, because most everyone is searching for their purpose, their meaning of life, right? Everybody. What's so interesting is most people are seeking outside of themselves. They're looking at like, well, I should be doing this, or maybe this is my pathway. Usually by the end of this session, when I'm working with somebody on a soul-to-soul session, it is very common for me to look back at them and say, everything you think, again, that's the problem, is that you're missing. You're not missing anything. You actually have everything you need within you. And so the seeking is going inward and finding and what resonates. Like, and I do feel like that's part of our humanness, especially living in the American culture. We're always looking outward, comparing, competing. It becomes this never-ending game. And one thing my dad would always tell me, which is so true, it's like I didn't want to believe it when I was a kid, but I do now. He would be like, Shannon, there is always going to be somebody who has something more than what you're seeking. Like there'll be somebody who has a bigger house or this or that. And what he was trying to say is like, stop going outward. Be happy with what you have. And for most people, when you start to realize that your abundance is within, your knowingness, you were set here on, you came to this earth plane. There's certain things you have to learn and gather and bring in, but your innate being, that was already, that fingerprint was already placed in when you got here. And that's what we're doing, is trying to go back. That's why I call it a homecoming. It's a remembrance. It's coming back in to go, oh, wait, it's not over there. You're not holding my divinity. My parents are, they're not. I'm holding it. Everything I need is within me. And the process, what I see over and over, is taking the baggage, the belief systems, again, the programming, all these things that are stored up here that actually cloak the spirit, that don't allow us to have that full illumination coming out. And so that, what I would say in my office, is what's happening day in and day out, is witnessing people and reminding them. And to your point, I always tell, I'm not going to, I literally tell everybody who comes in, I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know. I'm just going to validate those deeper knowings.
Yeah.
Which is all, I don't have to give them anything in that sense.
So a pragmatic example was the gal that was at our seminar, and she came all the way from Australia, and she had these questions, and she went up to Sean and she's like, "Hey, you should make this for children. You should put all your content for children." And he's like, he said something along the lines of like, you seem like the perfect person that could handle a task like that. I mean, later on, as I got to know her further, and she kind of like, no, not me.
Yeah.
But then later on, I was talking to her like the next day or out by the pool, and she and her husband lived in like a van for a couple of years so that they could afford to homeschool their children. And I'm sitting there thinking, is there a woman that she even knows that has sacrificed as much as she has for children? Like, do you even know somebody that cares more about like a child's education than this woman? Probably not. I don't think she knows anyone that's, and so if she just realized there's nobody better for that task than she is.
Right. Which is, it's so, isn't that fascinating? And Emily was delightful. Her had a very delightful soul, and getting to be around her for a couple days, and we didn't even talk education, but I could totally see the love she had for children, the passion of giving them this opportunity to grow outside of a box, right? Like in this more organic way. How beautiful. Yeah, there is nobody else. And that's what a lot of this is, for me personally, doing this work is, again, like what I was saying, I'm just here to reflect back. I'm just here to say, hey, there's some possibilities, and let me help give you some tools to understand what the hell is going on in this beingness and how to access it. And once you start getting, those airways down there where it's hard to get in because you've been out here looking outward all the time, it is this really fulfilling feeling. I mean, when I'm trying to say it feels good, it literally feels good, but it is a sense of liberation and freedom at a core that cannot be bought. That can only be in your beingness and in doing that kind of work to get to it. But the more it radiates and the more you come into that place, there is no better feeling. And you can't be bought, and you're not trying to buy anything either, because you don't need to. And in that illumination, so like, what was also so beautiful witnessing on them having that conversation with Emily and Sean was he just mirrored back to her what her authentic, like her light is, right? And
yeah, he mirrored back her that she's got the capacity and interest.
And to your point, who better would be that? She.
Yeah.
She's literally living her life at those in all of it.
It's her biggest passion. So if she was to start developing, let's say, the curriculum for children, she would do it. She'd feel good about it. That's how she's operating in alignment. And then that may unlock like the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. The other thing they said at that conference is Jung taught that our shadow has 80% of our potential and 20% of like our nonsense, like our traumas and stuff like that. And so if you do want to hit your highest potential, you've got to be willing to look at it. And so I'm sure along with there's a bit of shadow that comes along with that lesson. It gets reflected back. The thing that's stopping her from, or was stopping her from, stepping fully into being this child, caretaker to like its highest potential. Probably there's some tough stuff to battle, and I don't even know what it is. But if she's willing to face it and transcend it, then she could end up being like the greatest child educator in Australia and develop this cool school and curriculum.
And how cool is that? And not only like, and so as she stepped, this is what's so beautiful. I get to witness it through my spiritual eyes. She steps into her power, right? And just starts amplifying this field of light, right? And contributing to the whole. So then this younger generation is having this experience of being with somebody who's in this light and is passionate about it, because they're passionate about it because it's their calling. It's what she is meant to do, right? So she is so, and this is something else that Shannon was talking about, is like when we're talking about our will and the free will, like the freedom is really God's will. And meaning when you get to that place, your gifts, what I at least have seen, and I haven't seen it any other way, everybody at their core of their gifts is to service and give back to the whole. It is to gift back, right? So Emily goes and who's to say? I'm going to tell you, there was a lot of plant seeded for her, like, or seeds planted for her. So in this past, she's going to shift and probably start seeing things differently. These possibilities that she couldn't see because she's in there, and that's what part of this reflecting is, hey, you might not be able to see because you're in it, but I can see this is popping in, and this is actually yours to have. And gives her the opportunity to start going in. And the thing is, it's going to vibrate with her in a really deep level where she's going to want to come out. But again, it's a contribution to the whole. Everybody is benefiting. Those little souls that she's going to connect with will have that experience where they're going to want to give it back, right? And they're going to keep illuminating, and they're going to keep expanding.
Maybe enhance it further.
It totally, and then it goes into the whole. Like it just keeps going. So Emily wrote me on Facebook, or she wrote a little message. I'm going to tell her she's got this.
Yeah. Well, it was cool. So, I mean, we'll talk a lot more about, we're still digesting that week. So
yeah,
stuck
so
some
many
things
cool
here,
souls. We got to meet such great experiences, hands down. And what the whole basis was, Christ consciousness was the illumination of what we're talking about.
Yeah, so the gist of the conference and the gist of this particular episode is find the light in all things, find something divine in all people, and by finding it there, you find it in yourself. And the other one is because you know you're composed of light, and you've got this like nuclear reactor in your center of love, then it's safe to let in whatever it is, let it get just blasted out, and
burn
then
that
just
shit off.
dissipate it. Burn that shit out. Inhale. It's like inhaling shit. I don't know how else to say it. Like life can be really shitty sometimes, and you can let it in, and you can breathe out love. And by doing that, you'll feel that's a productive exercise that you'll feel good about, and it's literally cleaning up the world for everybody else.
Yeah, that which is so beautiful. And I hope that those that are listening, can't tell you enough. Everything what we were talking about earlier is energy, especially our thoughts. Like a lot of them are just going off randomly. And for the majority, Eckhart Tolle talks about this a lot, is their negative thoughts, they're looping. That is also going into the whole. So those lower vibrations also are contributing. And what we're trying to teach is that there's another way. And again, at the core, it feels good, so why not? But the more you keep coming into awareness, the more you transmute the energy fields, you are contributing in a positive way and giving back to the whole, which is very expansive energy and what we are all ultimately seeking.
Yeah. Give a hoot, don't pollute.
Amen.
Well, thanks everyone thanks for listening to this episode. This is just kind of a little, we're still digest. We've got some really cool stuff coming up. We have so many things about the conference, and I've made some other cool stuff that I'm excited on other episodes. But anyway, comment, tell us if you found anyone to love on this, some cool story. If you were able to find love somewhere, love on somebody, and if you were able to quell the urge, the animal nature, absorb something difficult and send love out, we'd love to hear it. So
Spread the light.
spread the light. God
Spread
bless.
the light. Come float next time. Love you
thanks
guys.
for floating with us.